morning, everybody. I'm Rick Carrera. I'm with, as you mentioned, Council for South Texas Economic Progress, also known as COSTEP. And he mentioned he kind of did a really good segue into what we do here, because as Daniel said, Daniel and I have known each other for a long time. Previous to my time at COSTEP, I worked at the Lower Oregon Valley Development Council, ran Valley Metro bus service, and actually that's why I'm some familiar face there, former 911 official there here with us. So I, working at the Council of Governments, and it's funny, I was kind of smirking when the other slide was up, because at one time I did work for Lift Fund. They were called Action Texas, and at one time I did work for the Small Business Development Center. So it's kind of my history is all over these slides. But anyway, so we're, as we mentioned, we are COSTEP. So when I first started here a couple of years ago, we would go say, well, I'm COSTEP and I'm marketing South Texas. And what we have found is it's better to market ourselves, or at least when I tell everybody, what are you doing here? And Daniel's right, I do go to a lot of conferences. I've probably been to 6 this year so far. Adam has been in France since last week. The Paris Air Show started yesterday or Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. But he was there in France all last week with his own scheduled meetings with a lot of really important people there within the country. So when we go to these conferences, it is all for us. When I go to conferences, it's all about lead generation. I want to talk to people who have firsthand knowledge of companies that are looking to relocate or expand. To me, it's, best bang for our buck. I'm a very, very point A to point B kind of guy, and you got to create relationships with a lot of these people. So we call ourselves Rio South Texas. We leverage the 10 municipios that are across from us here in the Rio Grande Valley in Mexico, because believe it or not, some people know Reynosa, Matamoros, Tamaulipas better than they know McAllen, because it's a manufacturing powerhouse in northern Mexico. We do that because, again, we do this to draw attention to the area. We're trying to get people to know who we are and where we're at. Like Daniel mentioned, sometimes it's hard enough to get people to understand where the Rio Grande Valley is. Many moons ago, I lived in Austin, and I would tell people, they'd ask, where are you from? McAllen. Like, okay, where's that in the Panhandle? They wouldn't even know. And these are people that had been born and raised in Texas their entire lives, right? So our main focus is to create awareness of our region, if and however possible we can. You're the clicker today?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway.
Let me know when you're ready.
No, you're good. I'm going to jump around just a little bit, but I'll do what I can to kind of keep us on time. This presentation I'm showing you guys, or showing you ladies and gentlemen, beg your pardon, this is what we use as part of when I speak to site selectors. I know Daniel has mentioned that word a few times, and he's correct. They have site selectors that come down for retail. We work with the site selectors that are dealing with industrial clients, people who are dealing with manufacturers. We are part of the Texas Economic Development Corporation. We're an investor in that group. So we like to at least tout the prowess of the key facts of Texas here when we, if at all possible, when we talk to these people. Because again, a lot of them are familiar with Texas, they're just not familiar with us. So we use this slide as a nice little segue. Next slide, Daniel. And that's when I get into the nitty gritty of the details, where we're at, where we're located. And if you notice, I keep the 3 arrows there because a lot of people look at it as like, okay, you guys are all the way down there. How long is it going to take me to get from point A to point B, yada, yada. And that's when we really start talking about the connectivity of the area. Because once again, we're looking at this from a regional perspective, right? As Daniel said, a win for somewhere in Cameron County or Wilson County is a win for Elsa. And just for a win for Elsa or Edcouch is a win for McAllen or Mission. So we're pushing the region as much as possible. The key takeaway here is where we're located, because a lot of people don't understand, okay, you're in South Texas, but technically speaking, we're right smack dab in the middle of the North American continent. And we have connectivity throughout the entire continent. We include the 3 arrows there because a lot of people will truck things off the coast of California, or they'll send stuff up to Minneapolis or some of the manufacturing belts that those arrows tend to kind of lead to. But we want to make sure that these site selectors, when they look at that, they understand, they get a full kind of comprehensive understanding of where we're at. Next slide, Daniel. And then this is the one that blows them away, because a lot of people don't know that these are the populations that we're dealing with here in South Texas. A lot of people, they ask, as a matter of fact, I met a site selector not too long ago that she was involved with a T-Mobile project in Sherryland 20, 25 years ago. I don't know how long ago was that. So she said, well, how are things going there? They'll go great. And she was here back when the population of McAllen was probably about 75% of what it is now, if that. So like most areas of the United States, there's been some growth, but our growth has been substantial. So when we put these numbers in front of them, all of a sudden they start comprehending like, well, wait a minute, there's obviously something going on down there. It's not just, these aren't just one horse towns that this guy's out here promoting. There's some pretty, there's some critical mass here that we're working with here. Let's kind of take a look at this. So when you look at the entire population, even at I mentioned 7 counties. If you just take the 4 counties of Rio Grande City, you're at 1.4 million. Rio Grande Valley. You're at 1.4 million people. So a lot of people start looking at that like, okay, wait a minute, we might be on to something here. Next slide, then. Of course, we include some of the other populations in our neighboring states and that kind of thing. Once again, this is all just for context. We want people to understand where we're at and kind of where we lie along everything else. I had a conversation with a site selector yesterday who works a lot in the automotive field, and he works with a lot of companies in the other states of San Luis and Coahuila and stuff. So once again, when you put this information in front of them, it's just familiarization, right? They want to know where we're at. And like I said, a lot of the automotive sectors, we have a lot of automotive companies here in our region here in Reynosa, Matamoros, and some of the others. Well, we want to put this in context. Go ahead. And then we start talking about the infrastructure. Now, Daniel and I have had a few conversations about that. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Daniel. We start talking about connectivity and highways and that kind of thing. The reason we include this slide here is because, again, once again, some of the industrial specialists and site selectors we have worked with may not be familiar with Rio South Texas, but they're familiar with some of the bigger states in central Mexico. And they're also familiar with the ports of Manzanillo and Lázaro de Cárdenas, which are huge. And they're pleased to find out that we have direct connectivity there. So once again, we're just trying to get them to connect the dots. Like, how feasible is the area here in terms of what their clients are looking for? The air connectivity, I have this conversation quite often. We conduct 2, ideally 3 different what we call FAM tours every year, and it's short for familiarization. We'll get between 3 and 7 site selectors to come down from each tour to come down and tour the area. We'll get them in front of a lot of key people like Daniel and some others, because most of these people have never been to the area before. We did one in Laredo back in April. I had 5 nationally known site selectors there. None of them had ever been to Laredo. Period. Ever. That was the furthest south they had been, with maybe San Antonio. The majority had been Austin. Again, bring them to the area, create some awareness, show them what's going on here. These are very data-driven people, right? So a lot of times when they get here, they've already done a lot of their homework. They've already looked at all the data. They want to come down here, put their feet on the ground, and see what's behind the data, what's beyond the data. So anyway, go back to the slide then. We always there are a couple reasons we include this here. One, I want to make sure that they know they can get down here 1 or 2 flights. And 2, I want them to keep this in the back of their mind, that the corporations and companies they're representing, that their people are within a day, half a day's travel back to get back home or back to the home offices, what have you. And even to Mexico there. That's why we include the Mexico destinations. Go down thing. Once again, we include all these airports here because, once again, this is all familiarization. We want them to be aware of who the airports are, where they're at. More importantly, people have flat out asked me, it's like, okay, how am I going to get my cargo down there? It's like, well, we've got the major carriers here working for you that they have flight access to. Go ahead, Daniel. Of course, I will tell you all, and Daniel has mentioned this a couple of times, the Port of Brownsville, it is a huge draw. It's a big hook for us here as a region. I have spoken to, the first time I met, a fairly well-known site selection firm out of South Carolina. I mentioned where I was from, and they kind of like, well, I'm not sure where that's at. And I mentioned the Port of Brownsville, and all of a sudden their eyes lit up. It's like, okay, we're looking to make our way down there soon. It's because the maritime connectivity is huge. So I tell everybody, and I even tell the people at the port this, we work with the port very often actually, that is one of the bigger hooks that I use to get people to grow interest in the region. Go ahead, Daniel. Then, of course, we talk about we call this a binational region, right? Because it's us in the United States, but we also have our neighbors down in Mexico. We like to include all this information here because we're trying to create them to understand. We're trying to create the possibilities in their mind. Let me see what the possibilities are here. We don't believe in limitations here. We believe in possibilities. So if you look at Mexico there, and I didn't want to really get into this, but I am getting a lot of calls from companies because they kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of what's going to happen with tariffs. Nothing's been set in stone yet. Earlier this year, I got calls from site selectors saying, hey, we've got something, we're interested in your region, but we're putting the brakes on it because we just don't know what's going to happen with tariffs. And, you know, a lot of the conferences I go to, the site selectors I've spoken to, that seemed to be the common theme. Now, I'm not saying that we all know exactly what's going to happen, but right now there's a good general feeling that they're kind of seeing how all the chips are going to lay out. So I'm getting some more interest in the area now. When you look at Mexico there, Mexico may be a huge player. Northern Mexico may be a huge player. The Rio Grande Valley may be a huge player because there are companies here that may want to be in Mexico, but don't want to be in Mexico for whatever reason, but they need to be close to it as possible, and vice versa. And that puts us in a really, really good spot. Same thing with Mexico. We have gotten calls from some companies in Mexico that are looking to establish operations here in the U.S. And for the same reason, because of the proximity, it's like, well, we could go all the way to Dallas. We could go all the way to San Antonio. We like the Rio Grande Valley because we know the area and it's close to home. So it puts us in a really good spot. And then we start going into the numerous industrial parks. You can scroll up to the next slide there, Daniel. The numerous industrial parks that we have, because once again, what a lot of the site selectors will tell me is, well, we like your region, but where are we going to set up shop? What's available, right? So we like to include all this information if and whenever possible. Keep going, Daniel. And, you know, most people don't know that all these exist, but they do. We have a lot of industrial space here in the area, and a lot of it's available. Not all of it, but some of it is. Keep going, Daniel. And then the manufacturing companies. So they all want to know, like, who's in your area, right? Well, that's great, Rick. You talk big game. You got to talk about your nice area and all available property, and we haven't even talked about the workforce yet. Who's there? And I used to just kind of give them a list, like, yeah, these are the companies that are here in the area. Once I show them the logos, then all of a sudden things start to change. And they're like, wait a minute, we had no idea that, you know, LG had an operation down there, or Caterpillar, or Bissell, or Black & Decker, Daniel Smear, Black & Decker. They set up shop there in Mission back in his time there at Mission EDC. Once you kind of throw that in there, it's all of a sudden it begins to generate ideas, because then they're like, wait a minute, if these companies are being successful down there, there must be something going on, and we need to look into this. Keep going. Here's a bigger one. I was at Select USA beginning of May. And for those who aren't familiar with Select USA, it's a big conference organized by the U.S. Commercial Service up in Washington, D.C. That conference is designed to bring as many foreign nationals to that conference to get them familiar with the possibilities of investing in the United States. Of course, I was part of the Team Texas booth, but we also have our own meetings that we set up. And then when I show people this slide, they're like, wow, that's pretty impressive. We had no idea that all these companies were operating in your area, or all these countries, beg your pardon. So we're a little more diverse here than people think. And we always want to make sure that we include this slide in there. Keep going, Daniel. And of course, we know we can't go anywhere without talking about SpaceX. We typically take site selectors out there when we can, not all the time, but most of the time we can never get into the actual facility, but we usually take them outside. And it's just, I think is a testament to what the possibilities here are in the region. Because who here, 15 years ago, who here thought they would be launching rockets out there in Boca Chica Beach?
Yeah.
Right? And who here thought, man, that's a business we should get into? Not many, but somebody had the foresight to look at that and see the possibilities. So I always like to include that in there, because for me, it's a testament to what the possibilities here of what we can do here in the region. We always talk about the education. This is not so much for quality of life. It is, if you move your corporate office down here, or a corporate office down here, and you bring your employees down here, you want to know where your kids are going to go to school. For us, we include this in here because it is a testament to the available workforce that we have and our ability to get the workforce up and running. Matter of fact, Daniel's quip about you had, I don't know how many people applying for a job at whatever the last retail outlet was here. I use that information when I talk to site selectors, like, look, we've got small towns and people are just, they're looking for a better opportunity. We include all of our community colleges here because we have a good relationship with all of them. and we constantly communicate with them, and they are all ready to go. Matter of fact, I saw one of my contacts from South Texas College last week, and he's always ready to create a job training program if and when needed to get people trained up. So let's just say that Daniel and I recruit a company and they need 25 people here in the city of Elsa or Edcouch or what have you. There's a specific skill set. We have the contacts to talk to over there to get people trained up. That's not an issue. And of course, the healthcare, and I've been hearing that discussion for quite some time. I used to do some work in Raymondville, and I do think that's a good idea for y'all just to kind of put your strength in numbers here in terms of getting a healthcare facility. We put this in here. Nobody likes to get sick, but when they see the robust healthcare system that we have here in the area, it kind of removes that doubt also. Right. In other words, this is all designed to kind of reinforce that we're just not, one horse town with no hospital, whatever. Guys, we've got everything. We bring everything to the table that most regions in the United States bring to the table in terms of the things that you would need. Of course, then we have our strategic allies. These are some of our sponsors and some of our supporters here. Go back up, Daniel. Keep going. Yeah, stay right there. I'm not going to touch on, the different universities and whatnot. I will say that when I talk to different, not just site selectors, but the people who work economic development from all parts of the country, the number one issue that they're having right now is workforce. I mean, that's just across the board. They're just having a hard time finding the people to actually fill the jobs that are there. And I think we have a tremendous opportunity here. Because once again, your story about, we've got all these people lining up for a job here in the area that may not be the best paying job, but they consider it a good opportunity. That tells me that just reinforces our thinking that we have, statistically speaking, we're one of the youngest regions in the United States. I think the average age here is like 28.5 or 29, somewhere around there. And if you look at the sheer number of youth here and the available workforce, I mean, it's incredible and it's outstanding. And then you look at the available property and the fact that we're a burgeoning region. We're sitting, I think, at kind of the beginning of a really, really good growth period here. And our job here is, again, with us, everybody else is, I think eventually companies will make it down here. Our job is to make sure we get the best companies to come down here and get the best opportunities to get down here. Because I do really believe that there's people here that would really jump at the chance to have a good opportunity like that. And we're doing what we can to make sure we get those opportunities here. Typically what happens, like I said, we'll have the fam tours and the site selectors come down. And that's part of what we do. I don't know if we can bring up our website, but our website has a lot of different data that's in there. And our data on the website, if you look at it, it's very, very site selector focused. In other words, most of the people, is like, hey, that's a nice website, but whatever. But the site selectors love this. Why? Because they are a data-driven group. They want to see the data. They want to see what's going on here in the area. You can go ahead and click on Find a Property. And we even have a property database that shows them all these available properties and also like different data on the communities. You can click on communities, Daniel. And all this is open for public use. So if y'all want to go in here and just kind of cruise around and see what's going on or whatever, you can pull up all kinds of data sets off of this stuff. And the reason we have that here, and actually people have used it. I have friends who work at the university still that have told me that they use it to develop the data that they need for grant proposals and whatnot. But we push this as much as we possibly can outside of the area, not so much inside the program, other than, events like this where I tell people you're more than welcome to use it. For us, it's about getting the site selectors and the companies out here to look at us and connect us through the website. More often than not, what happens, the company will call me and saying, hey, look, we're interested in South Texas. We need a single point of contact. Can you be the guy? I'm like, well, sure. What's going on or what's the issue? And it says, look, we're interested in South Texas. Nothing against the 30-something different economic development organizations you have there. We just don't have the time to entertain a meeting with everyone. So what we do is they'll come meet with us, like Daniel did with your site selector last week, take them around, drive around. They'll meet with us. We'll show them the whole area, just kind of figure out what their needs are. And once they decide where within the region they want to be, then we'll introduce them to the economic development organization that pertains to that particular property, that location. So that's kind of the role that we play, is that we're that single point of contact for the region, and we don't play favorites. Everything's open game. Everybody's fair game. It's all what's best for the client or what's best for the company. What are they looking for? And we tout the entire region and everything that the region can bring to the table. And once again, for us, it's the available property and the available workforce here. Tremendous assets. On top of that, a large percentage of that workforce is bilingual. So it's a really good, strong combination that we're bringing to the table here. I think that should do it. By the way, I sent you an older version of this that I need to modify. But so don't share that.
A couple things to this. Number one, is like bringing it down to a story. So like we're talking about how like a win for the region is a win for everybody. So I think it was like a year ago, maybe, we had, remember Katie, our intern? Yes. She was a civil engineering student at UTRGV. And she was a very smart girl. Everybody worked there. She came in and we're doing some street reconstruction projects. And she kind of like met with the engineers who were working on that. She knew the planning department. She got to see on the city side how those things work. So then she goes to a job fair and she's looking for a job. And she just completely open to going anywhere, right? She starts getting these job offers in Austin and Houston. And all of a sudden, she gets this job offer at the Port of Brownsville because the LNG plant's going on there. There are billions of dollars of construction going on. Jim has died recently, and he directed the shot through the tollway.
Correct.
You'll see crane after crane after crane after crane. And so then she lands this job at the Port of Brownsville. They gave her money to relocate to SPI. And at the end of the day, like what we always talk about economic development is the brain drain, right? We train our kids, we train our staff, we train our community, and then they go get a job in San Antonio. Or they go get a job in Houston, or they go get a job in Dallas. And then, then we do that again, and they keep on leaving. And economic development, our goal, and, Rick's goal is to land these companies in our region because that retains our talent. UTRGV grad, right? Yeah. She was from Edinburgh. She interned here in Elsa, and now she's working at the far around.
Right.
And at least we're keeping that talent, and we're keeping that money, and we're keeping, that quality, pricing, and it's really helping our community here. And she has a good experience working in Elsa. Maybe one day she's going to give back. Maybe one day she's going to kind of, full circle moment.
That's
to help those things out. And so I think all the little things, we kind of going back to the self-advocacy, is like, we have to believe that what we're doing matters. We have to believe that what we take on every day, all these little projects, whether it's the conversation with TC or that meeting with DHR, we have to believe that these things matter because at the end of the day, like that's what pushes the needle forward. Right. It's going to make an impact in the community.
Absolutely. You better believe it. So the Zoho project in Edinburgh is a good example of that. Or based from what I've gathered and heard, they are based, or they have offices in Austin, and they were going to expand in Austin, but then they noticed a lot of the applications and resumes they were receiving for available positions were coming from here. So that's what provoked them to look into establishing an office and operation down here. And it's funny how those things work out. And I know that they were originally going to be in McAllen. I think now they're buying out the old Echo Hotel there in Edinburgh. But again, that speaks to the talent that we're creating here. And Daniel's absolutely correct. If you look at the number of degree programs here that are available now, and, yes, at one time I was that young too, at one time or another, at one time, believe it or not. And yeah, I wanted to get out of the valley for a few years, right? You're going to run into that. On a personal level, I will tell you, when it was time to come back here, it's difficult. And I still have friends who live in Austin that are from the area that they would have loved to move back. But by the time they decided it's time to come back home, they already had the mortgage, the wives, and the kids. And there's the job opportunities not there that I need to make sure my family is going to have as good a living there in the Rio Grande Valley as it is in Austin. Of course, we're talking 20 some odd years ago, but that's still the case to some degree. And for me, on a personal level, that's why I do what I do. It's not like the brain drain is an important thing for me. It's also who wants to come back home. We're all, majority of us are Hispanic. We're, a tight-knit family. Your parents start getting older. You want to get closer to home. Let's create some opportunities for these people to come back and establish themselves and keep that standard of living. So, I didn't even open up this for questions, man. I feel like I've just been lecturing you all, man. I'm so sorry. But does anybody have any questions?
The one that always gets me is back in the day when I was in undergrad. COSTEP was a loan company. So
Yeah.
every time I see Rick, I always think student loans, but
No.
everything.
No. They pivoted from that about 7 or 8 years ago. So a lot of stuff that I mentioned that we've known, they've been doing this for a long time, for several years now. And Daniel and I talked yesterday, and I hear this a lot. Like, nobody even knows who y'all are. From my own perspective, when I started this job, my goal was to make sure that people outside the area knew who COSTEP was and what we were doing, because that's our job, is to create awareness of this region outside of the area. And I get that, and maybe, to some degree, it hasn't affected us negatively, but there's a lot of people here internally to the area that are like, what do y'all do? And that's what we do. We're the Regional Economic Development Organization. We've been promoting the region for several years now. Like I said, for me, I'm a very direct person. Give me to point A, point B, and start setting up relationships with the site selectors and the people who make these decisions. And Daniel will probably agree with me that this economic development, like most businesses, it's a very relationship-based business. So when I get a call from these site selectors, is because I've been to these conferences not once, but twice, but several times. And I see these people. It's a repetitive thing. It's an over and over and over again. They know, some of them, a lot of them know me by first name basis now. Rick, how you doing, man? How's it going? Not all of them, but I'm getting it. But it is a relationship-based business. And if you're not in front of these people all the time, it's out of sight, out of mind. So that's our job, is to make sure we're getting in front of the people who can actually bring the companies and the opportunities down here. That's what I do on a daily basis. So I'm sorry, here I go preaching again. Any questions?
Posts.
Yes, Mr. Taylor.
One of the great assets this area has is the land. There's so much land here. And so when those very big projects, like for example, this tool, Amazon, building with facility in the Dallas County, how the communities like Edcouch-Elsa ISD get a seat of the table you went short there, considered when those big projects that need a lot of land are talking to groups like yourself. How do you make sure small units like this don't get overlooked?
That's a really, really good question. And just like I mentioned right now, out of sight, out of mind in terms of us on a national level. And I think you said it best earlier. If we're not out there in front of these people talking to them all the time, we're going to get overlooked and forgotten about. And the point is, Daniel's done an excellent job because of his network here. People know who he is. That helps in those regards, right? Because you're not as forgotten about as maybe you once were because of the person that you have here running the EDC. But you've got to be in front of these people all the time, and you got to be visible. And whoever it is has got that lead for that Amazon. You've got, no shame, knock on their door and says, hey, I've got this piece of property available. I mean, you've got to be upfront about it. I don't know if that answered your question. Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Be proactive. Sense that.
Is it? I will tell you, one of the advantages that, and I've seen in other states, other states have made a targeted effort to create sites that are ready to go. Infrastructure, the whole 9 yards, they're ready to go. I'm not saying Texas isn't doing that, but when you have a state that is putting forth a lot of effort to make sure those sites are ready to go, it puts them at a little bit of an advantage, because some of the site selectors we talk to is like, man, this is great, but we need a spot that the company I'm contracted to find a new location for, they want something yesterday, not 24 months down the road. So it's hard to do. I'm not one of the property owners, and I'm not judging these people for not developing out, because there's some speculation to that, and that's a pretty good chunk of change that you're investing there. But being proactive, do what you can to make sure the infrastructure is in place, and you have this, as much as you can. And not just Daniel, but we have a good relationship with all the economic development corporations and organizations here in the Rio Grande Valley. I mean, that's us. We're here to help and fill the white spaces in where other people can. You mentioned ICSC. People say, are you on ICSC? We don't touch ICSC. These guys do such a good job of it. For me to go out there, I'd be duplicating efforts. There's no reason for me to be there. But to do the other conferences or whatever, so there are some other communities that perhaps can't make it out there. So we go and we market the region. I will tell you that a lot of people talk about the water, electricity. Is like, man, that really puts us at a disadvantage. Like, guys, everybody's having issues with water, electricity right now. And, that's why when I hear people say, well, this is our shortcoming, I can tell you, because I've talked to other parts of the country, people from all the other states, they all have the same woes. So guys, we can compete with everybody out there. Every time I go to one of those conferences and I come back, okay, we're not Silicon Valley, we're not Austin. So what? That's not everybody's cup of tea either. There's companies out there that are going to be a really, really good fit for us. And we have to really, really push to go out and find them and make sure that they know who we are. But I wanted at least kind of talk about, because Daniel asked me about water, and we've had some discussions about utilities and stuff. A lot of places in the country are having those issues, guys. Don't let that be the reason for us to say, well, we really can't land something like that. Guys, when there's a will, there's a way. Because I talked to a Slide Selector not so long ago. I said, what are you working on? I'm looking for a place that I've got 1,000 jobs to fill. Great. Bring them down. Then we start, doing the dirty work. You start kind of really digging down. It's like, well, it may not be the best fit. I don't think he really had 1,000 jobs, but he wanted to get my attention, right? But the whole point is we're in a position where we can compete for these things, But if they don't know about us, then they're never going to consider us. So that's why we do what we do. We get out in front of I talk to your counterparts in economic development all the time. And I'm in the business of getting lead generation. Let's get leads. Let's get some companies to look at the area. And that's what we do. So.
How do like big cities, they have the resources, right? That's they would hear a lot of.
Yeah.
We're small communities over here, and where the county does say, well, y'all can have the resource. And that hurts us.
Uh-huh.
How do y'all market a small communities? Like, what do y'all present, or how do y'all go about that?
For me, that's y'all, and Daniel's heard me say this. I should have used that presentation I used that for your board last year, now that I think about it. Years ago, when I lived in Austin, I worked in the semiconductor capital equipment industry. And their supplier base was all over Austin, Bastrop, Pflugerville, all over there. This was before Austin really became what it is now. Back in those days, Bastrop was considered out in the country, right? So a lot of the suppliers that we worked with, everybody thinks, well, that's Bastrop. Geez, it's a 30, 40-minute drive. Guys, a 30, 40-minute drive is nothing when you look at the grand scheme of things. So a lot of the supplier base was, not all of them, but there was a good percentage of suppliers, machine shops, and that kind of thing that were based in Bastrop, because if we needed parts and they needed to machine them, they could get them to us within a couple of hours. At that time, a lot of property, a lot more affordable, a lot more reasonable to live in, and within a half hour to 45-minute drive of Austin. That's how I look at Elsa and some of these other rural areas. How do you all play into the bigger picture of things? Somebody may set up a small machine shop here for somebody at SpaceX or somebody at the Port of Brownsville. That may grow, right? I look at things in terms of how you all fit into that puzzle right now is, one, you've got the property, and two, it's within a very, very short drive of everything else out there. And let's face it, it's quiet out here. At least it was last time I hung out here in Elsa. So a lot of people look at that stuff. They're like, I really want to be somewhere where it's quiet. It's kind of a little remote. And if, within 20 minutes, I get where I need to be. So your attributes are there. You have to play to your strengths right now, right? Now in Bastrop and the whole thing's just a big old blob, and it's super expensive to go wherever you go over there. But that's where it started. And I always look at areas like Elsa, Edcouch. Even I have a lot of discussions with Jessica Rodriguez there in Willisey County. She's a economic development person there in Willisey County. And, she says, well, we can't land that stuff. It's like, yeah, but there are things you can land, right? So you got to look at what are the possibilities here. I don't know if I answered your question, but you kind of have to look at your asset. You're not in the middle of McAllen, you're not in the middle of Brownsville, but you do have some attributes that are going to be very attractive for somebody. And somehow you're going to fit into that whole scheme of things. Anybody else? Y'all are bored of tears already. But anyway, I'll be here. I'll have questions for you, even if it's about, I can't speak for SBDC or Lift Fund, even though I worked at those places at one time. or the LRGVDC. I won't speak for him. Manny would shoot me if he found that I was answering stuff for the college. But anyway. But guys, thank you all for the information. Trust me, you guys play a very, very important and integral part of this thing. I know, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Rose Benavides, the Stark County Industrial Foundation, but they're entertaining a lot of energy projects in Stark County now. Battery, solar, wind, all that kind of. They're entertaining those things. I'm not saying that's necessarily what y'all need to go after, but there's always possibilities out there.